We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery.
Did I just see what I think I saw? Did your boy KTV just see what he...
Finally, what fans, coaches, and players have been waiting on for months is happening after game, where the whistle went silent after watching Caitlin Clark get hip-checked, shoved, hammered, and treated like the league didn't want her to shine. After coaches asked for fairness and were told to adjust, federal agents are now investigating the WNBA.
The FBI starts sniffing around, starts digging around, starts flipping through pages, looking into the WNBA.
Not rumors, not fan exaggeration. A real government inquiry into whether games were influenced, referees were directed, and outcomes were shaped to protect the league's image. And the player caught right in the center of it all is Caitlin Clark, the biggest draw the WNBA has seen in decades. The very player who brought the league its spotlight, and the same player who allegedly received the least protection. This is no longer just about officiating. This is about integrity, credibility, and leadership. And now investigators want to know who was giving the orders and why. Federal inquiries don't start because of fan noise. They don't begin because one coach complained or because a broadcast analyst pointed out a foul. They begin when patterns appear. Patterns strong enough that someone in the right position says this needs to be examined. That's where we are with the WNBA right now. Federal agents are reviewing internal league communication, officiating assignments, referee evaluations, and decision-making at the executive level. They are trying to determine whether the league simply had inconsistent officiating, which happens in every sport, or whether something more calculated took place. And the question being asked is direct. Was the officiating influence to shape outcomes or protect a specific narrative? When you reach that level of inquiry, this isn't just basketball debate. This is professional competition being examined under the lens of potential misconduct. The focus isn't just on what happened on the court. It's on why it kept happening and whether someone told referees to let it happen. This is what separates a missed call from a manipulated environment. And here's the part that changes everything. The investigation is not just about the referees. It is also reviewing league leadership, including Commissioner Kathy Angel-Burt, the person responsible for protecting the integrity of the sport. When leadership is under review, that means the foundation of the league itself is being questioned. But this didn't start overnight. This has been building all season. From opening night, something felt different about WNBA officiating this season. Coaches weren't just frustrated, they were confused. The standards of physicality didn't match the rule book. A foul in one game was a foul the next. What should have been obvious calls were waved off with no explanation, and players felt it too. They adjusted, they adapted, yet the whistle kept shifting. This wasn't just a rough stretch of refereeing. It was the consistency that disappeared. Teams began preparing differently. Instead of focusing on defensive rotations, spacing, and pace, coaches were telling players how to survive physical play and not expect calls. When strategy becomes brace for collisions, something is fundamentally off. But the league didn't address the concerns. They didn't admit anything was wrong. They kept saying the officiating was within acceptable range. Meanwhile, fans watching arenas could see what was happening with their own eyes. Every possession felt unpredictable, not because of talent or game plan, but because of the officiating rhythm. This is where tension started, not anger, unease. Basketball works because it is rules. You play within the rules. You and within the rules. But when rules feel like suggestions, when outcomes start feeling influenced rather than earned, that's when people start paying attention. And that's where the investigation gained momentum. And then something rare happened. Referees themselves began speaking. Referees almost never break ranks. They operate under professional codes, confidentiality, and internal accountability systems. Their job relies on neutrality, or at least the appearance of it. So when multiple WNBA referees reportedly gave sworn testimony, that alone signaled how serious the situation had become. According to those testimonies, referees were not simply missing calls. They were allegedly being guided on how to officiate certain players in certain moments, not based on rules, but based on what would present the league in the best competitive image. In other words, officiating wasn't just enforcing basketball. It was shaping perception. The referees didn't say this publicly, not through interviews or statements. They said it under oath where lying has legal consequences, and their testimonies pointed upward toward decision-makers above the court. This is where officiating crosses a line. Missing a call is human. Adjusting physicality is part of game flow. But instructing refs to protect an image rather than protect fairness is something entirely different. That is the difference between officiating and influencing. But to understand why anyone would want to manage attention, we have to talk about what and who is drawing it. The phrase that keeps appearing in discussions around the investigation is this: protect the league's image. It sounds harmless, like something a marketing department might say. But according to testimonies and analyst interpretations, protecting the image may have meant something much more strategic. Don't let one player become the whole league. Don't allow the spotlight to land too heavily in one place. Don't let the league appear unbalanced or dependent on one superstar. In theory, that sounds like long-term planning. In practice, if officiating was influenced based on that idea, it becomes manipulation of competition. If the league was concerned that too much attention was going toward one player, that isn't a basketball problem. That's a branding concern. And branding concerns don't belong in officiating decisions. This is what investigators are trying to determine. Was officiating being used to manage narrative rather than regulate play? Because if the call on the court is influenced by image concerns, then competition becomes presentation, and you cannot have both. And the player in the center of this entire concern was the one changing the entire league's gravity, Caitlin Clark. When Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, she didn't just bring skill, she brought momentum. Every arena she walked into became a sellout. Ticket prices shot from $15 to $300. Viewership reached levels the league had never touched before. Merchandise sales exploded. People who had never watched women's basketball before were suddenly tuning in. This wasn't hype. This was gravity. Caitlin Clark didn't just play basketball. She shifted the entire league's center of energy. Yet, despite being the most targeted player on the court, she received the fewest protections. Game after game, Clark was absorbing contact that would have sent another player to the free throw line. Shoulder checks, hip collisions, arm grabs. You could see the physicality escalate because officials were not stepping in. And the question was asked over and over again: why is the league's most valuable player the least protected one? Fans weren't asking for favoritism. They were asking for the basic enforcement of rules. And the contrast between her value and her treatment became impossible to ignore. But to understand why she was treated this way, we have to look at the reasoning behind it. According to allegations being examined, the concern was not Caitlin Clark's talent. It was her impact. The league reportedly worried it would become known as the Caitlin Clark League, where every headline revolved around her. Instead of embracing momentum, leadership allegedly tried to balance it by allowing more physicality against her and fewer foul calls. The unwritten message was simple: slow her down, keep the spotlight spread out. Do not let one star eclipse the league. But here's where the logic collapses. When a star lifts a league, the league rises with them. Every major sport in history has been elevated by a singular figure. Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, Tom Brady. Greatness doesn't overshadow a league. It builds it. Yet, Caitlin Clark kept playing, kept competing, kept carrying the league financially and culturally, all while taking hits with no whistle. Her professionalism under this pressure is the biggest reason her supporters grew even stronger. And this is where the focus shifts directly to the league's leadership and to Kathy Angelbert. Kathy Angelbert has spent her tenure presenting herself as a steady leader. She talks often about expansion, branding, partnerships, and long-term league vision. But leadership isn't defined by press conferences. Leadership is defined by decisions. And right now, investigators are examining whether those decisions contributed to manipulated officiating patterns. Now, nobody is saying Kathy personally told referees how to call games, but the investigation is reviewing whether her administration, her executive directives, or her operational strategies promoted image control over competitive fairness. This is where the tone shifts from confusion to accountability. Because if the league was shaping outcomes, even subtly, that falls under organizational misconduct. And Kathy's public demeanor doesn't help her. When fans watched Caitlin Clark get hit without a whistle and saw Angelbert courtside looking calm, composed, and unbothered, it didn't look like leadership. It looked like detachment. Some fans even joked. Kathy said she was protecting the league. Protecting it from what? Success. But the humor fades fast when federal investigators are involved. And that brings us to the most serious part of this entire situation. If the investigation finds evidence that games were influenced, referees were directed, outcomes were shaped intentionally, then this is not just controversy. This is sports fraud. Manipulating competition is illegal. It does not matter whether the motive was marketing balance or perceived fairness. When competition is altered on purpose, it becomes a misrepresentation of outcome, and that is a legal issue. This is why federal investigators are involved. This goes beyond league fines, beyond statements, beyond PR. If evidence confirms involvement at the leadership level, it could lead to leadership resignations, structural oversight reform, removal of executive authority, possible legal action. This is a kind of situation that does not end quietly because once fans believe competition is influenced, trust collapses instantly, and trust is the foundation of sports. So now we have to look at what this means for the league moving forward. The WNBA is at a crossroads. What happens next determines whether the league grows or fractures. If the investigation clears leadership and officiating, the league must rebuild confidence and transparency. If the investigation confirms manipulation, the league will be forced to restructure the very system that governs fairness. Either way, change is coming. Sponsors won't invest in a league where outcomes feel influenced. Networks won't promote a product. Fans don't trust. Players won't commit careers to an environment where earning success doesn't guarantee getting it. This is now bigger than ratings, bigger than rivalries, bigger than market growth. This is about whether the WNBA can defend the legitimacy of its competition. If the league wants to survive and grow, it must choose transparency over image, accountability over control, and competitive integrity over narrative management. And in the middle of all of this, there is Caitlin Clark, still playing, still rising, still carrying the league forward. Through all the chaos, allegation, investigations, and headlines, Caitlin Clark has done one thing consistently. She has played basketball. No public complaints, no targeting commentary, no retaliation, just professionalism. She has carried an entire league's visibility on her back while absorbing physicality that would have broken others down. She became the face of the league the moment she stepped onto the court, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. And while executives scramble to defend decisions, while investigators sort through documents, while commentators debate what fairness should look like, Caitlin Clark continues to raise the level of the game. She is doing her part. Now the league must decide if it is ready to do its part. Because the WNBA has been given a gift, a generational player who can lift the sport to heights it has never seen. But a gift can only elevate if it is protected, supported, and respected. If the league chooses integrity, transparency, and accountability, Caitlin Clark will be remembered as the player who transformed the sport. But if the league chooses image control over fairness, it risks losing everything she has built.